Lord God, we lift you up above all else. And Lord, we sing your praises and look to you for your guidance, for your ministry, for your healing of our broken hearts. And Lord, we offer ourselves to you as we look to your word. God, we ask that you would communicate your grace through that word. And Lord, that you would speak to us even this morning. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. You guys can be seated. If you have your Bible with you, or you'd like to grab one in the seat back in front of you, we're going to be in John chapter 2 today. John chapter 2, and I'm going to pick up where I left off last week. I'm going to pick up where I left off with talking about an idea of incarnational ministry, which is, that may be kind of a big word, and just wondering, what does this mean? If you weren't here last week, let me just give you a brief picture of what this is. When Jesus came, God became man, and that embodiment was Jesus. He came to us in a very specific way, emptying himself in order to be with us, in order to connect with us and draw us into his presence. And the idea of incarnational ministry is that in the incarnation, God did something very special in Jesus. And we are not that, right? But in looking at what he did and how he connected with us, maybe we can see an analogy, a metaphor that can help us understand how we connect with one another, how we connect with our community in an even greater way. And so taking the incarnation, John chapter 1, verse 14, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory that is the Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. Maybe looking at that idea and what Jesus did and saying, this is maybe a method or a metaphor that we can use to say this is how we should approach one another and approach reaching others for Christ. We do a funny thing in our culture, and that is we take products and we make verbs out of them. You guys know this? We take products and we make verbs out of them. And so here, I'm going to give you a little quiz, all right? A little fun quiz that we can do. If I am looking for some lip balm, something to put on, what do I ask for? That's a brand. It's a specific brand. That it's not, chapstick is not just lip balm. It is a specific one. And so, but, you would probably ask just, can I have some chapstick? And you don't care what brand it is. You just want something to put on your lips, right? And so there's kind of a crossover there. Here's another one. If I'm going to go out on the water and I want to use a personal watercraft, what am I going to go out to do? Jet ski. Sea-Doo, yeah, well, that's another one. Yeah, jet ski is a brand. Jet ski is, we talk about I'm going to go jet skiing. But unless you are on a Kawasaki jet ski, you are just on a personal watercraft. So, we make that crossover. Here's a couple more. If I'm going to make a photocopy, I want to have a Xerox of it. Yeah. So using that original brand, and we create that all of a sudden photocopying is Xeroxing. Now, the easiest one, the lowest lying fruit of all of them, if I'm going to search for something on the internet, we're going to Google it. Yes. I wonder if this is kind of a similar in terminology as to, all of searching on the internet is not Googling, although we have termed it as that. And so maybe we're looking at what God did in a very specific and unique way. We are wanting to give witness to what God has done in a unique way in the incarnation. We want to participate in that somehow, of allowing his presence to work through us and to actually minister God's grace to other people. We want to make that connection to God's truth, as it says there, in his grace and truth. We want to connect those things together. And so maybe by taking that one act that God has done that we can't participate in, we've created something that says, in order to connect us somehow to that, let's say we are going to be a part of Incarnational Ministry. This is what we are going to, this is how we're going to take Jesus' approach to people, and we're going to look and say, how do we take Jesus' approach and do what we can, allowing the Spirit of God to work in us? How do we allow him to work through us to minister his grace to people around us? And so that's the idea of Incarnational Ministry. Let me break it down just a little bit more. As I finished up last week, I gave you an explanation of two different types of churches. And as I've gone through the week this week, there's been several things that have popped up that have been just like, this is a very significant issue, I think, within the church that we need to address, and we need to be aware of, and we need to be actively trying to pursue this incarnational ministry because it's closer to what we see in what Jesus does, and we're going to see in John chapter 2 in how he ministers his specific godness to the people in a specific situation, but maybe how we take some of the principles out of what he did and say, this is how we approach it. Now, here's the two types of churches that I described last time. I said this: there is a church to the city or to the community, and then there is a church with the community. And here's how this person defined these two. The church to the community is a church with a keen sense of responsibility to do something for the community. That's something that we would all agree on. We want to do something for the community. We want to reach our community for Christ. It's a part of the vision, right? The church to the community has a fatal flaw. And this fatal flaw is that its perception is that the church knows what is best for the community. Now, we might, all right? We are holding the truth of God's word, and there is a part of that yes, the gospel is what is best for our community, okay? But this church to the community will take what we think is best for the community, and we decide unilaterally what the community needs and invite the community to participate. So there's no buy-in. There's no hey, what are some concerns that you have? It is just simply we are trying to give a sales pitch to the community and say, this is what you need. And we get frustrated because they don't participate. we get burnt out. We feel like we've exhausted our volunteer hours because nobody is getting this idea. It's kind of likened to a lot of companies have moved to a very specific sales strategy in that they want you to become their sales representative. So you're going to take all of your friends and explain to them why they need this product. Another product that we've done the same thing that I talked about with Google, Xerox, and all those things is the plastic boxes that we put stuff in. Tupperware, exactly. See, it has become Tupperware. It doesn't matter if it's the disposable plastic things that we get from Walmart or whatever brand it is. It is Tupperware. But Tupperware took an approach that is like this church to the city. They were the business to the city, and they recruited us as their salespeople. And they said, "Here is our product. Everybody needs our product in their home. And we need you to tell them that." And so then you would invite all of your friends over, and like within a month, you have no more friends, right? Because you've invited them into this world, and you've told them you need this plasticware, and so you get the idea, right? It's taking that approach. If we do that with the message of the gospel, it doesn't connect to people's hearts. It just comes across as arrogant. It comes across as judgmental. You have things all wrong, and you need to hear this message of Jesus Christ. And it comes as very harsh and very abrasive. And it's like we have unilaterally decided this is the message that you need to accept and adopt. And there is absolutely no buy-in whatsoever. And so churches end up becoming smaller and smaller because they're not joining with people, they're not partnering with the community, They are just simply holding tighter and tighter to something that they think everybody else needs. Now, that is what people need. That's the challenge, right? That's the difficulty, is that we can sit here and look at each other and say, but that is the message of hope. That is the message that will change lives. That is the thing that can make the difference in our world. That's the tension that we find in this. Now, if we begin to shift our approach just a little bit and say, we're not just going to take this message to the community and try to get the community to adopt this thing that we feel like they need, but we begin to live within our community and partner with people, and we minister God's grace in seemingly trivial ways, that at some point, when the community is looking for something to fill the need that we know that only God can, they come looking to us. They come looking for the words of life that we know that we have. The church with the community is described in this way. It says this: the church sees the mission to the community as a partnership. It incarnates itself in that community, discovers from the community the burning issues, brings the ministry of the church out into the community, and nurtures personal relationships with individuals in the community. So this is just a joining together. It's like we're going to make friends, and we know that we have the words of God's grace. And because we have the words of God's grace, we are not going to force them to someone else, but we are going to see an extra measure of purpose in even having relationships with people in general. I look at a relationship with you all, with anyone in the community, with greater purpose, because I have encountered the grace of God. And that changes the perspective of how we operate. Susie Price and I were talking this week, and we were talking about the different educational things that she was coming up with for the faith community nursing. And all of them were extremely valuable pieces of information and things that we need to be aware of, and things that you would look around and you see that people are needing these particular things, helping with elderly care, helping in different parts of understanding medications and those types of things, services that she can provide. And we were also noticing, some of the classes that she had done were, there would be just a few people that would come into it. And it clicked during our conversation at some point, and we began to say, what if Susie goes into Mountain Resource Center, and instead of saying, I have this battery of classes that I want to offer, instead of doing that, what if Susie goes in and says, what are some needs that you see that are happening within our community? And just listen. Just listen to the things that are popping up. Maybe those particular things, as valuable as they are, maybe they're not even things that are particular to the audience that is there at Mountain Resource Center. And I said, listen to what they say, and interact on those topics that they are seeing. And then if there is one of those that you can particularly speak into, offer your assistance. Can I help provide this particular class for this particular group that you already have? It's a much different, it's just a slight change in perspective. And the more that I looked and thought about this through the week, it was like popping up all over the place of, many times as a church, this is what we do. We try to create things and invite people into them because this is what you need, instead of really interacting within the relationship to say, this is how we can minister God's grace to a very specific relationship that is occurring. And that is the difference between just simply being a church that it has ministries and programs, and being a church that is categorized or classified or uses this idea of incarnational ministry. It's looking for the places that we can breathe God's grace into the relationships that we already have and that we are building throughout the community. Jesus did this in a very unique way. The story that we're going to look at today is a place where he did that in something that is seemingly a very trivial matter. In your mind, if you think about Jesus using his divine miraculous powers in situations, you would think, I think all of us would go directly to healings, right? We would say there was someone that was born with palsy and they were healed. And this person, this child that was born blind, and he was healed, and we see the miraculous things. And those are the ideas, like his divine power is specifically applied to those healing situations, and we say, oh, that is the work that God wants to do. We take those miraculous things and we say, this is the work that God wants to do. And then, we could even go to the feeding of the 5,000, right? And maybe that is more trivial, but still it's meeting a need of there are the loaves and there are the fishes, and there is this crowd of people that he's been talking to for a long time. And he takes these things and he divides it, and you see the miraculous feeding of this great multitude of people. And we think, oh, even a metaphor of he is the bread of life. He is feeding. We are feeding on the Word who became flesh, and that is a part of the miraculous. This story is the first miracle that he did, the first one that we have recorded that he used this divine incarnate power in order to change a situation. But it's not a healing. It's not a feeding of a 5,000. It is not even really, you could argue it's not even a meeting of a specific need. It was simply covering somebody who was going to be socially embarrassed. That was what he spoke into. And so as we look at this story, I want us to look at it in two ways. One, kind of this incarnational way of that Jesus spoke into this seemingly trivial matter and how he does this. But then also, I want you to take something personally, because I think many times we look in our own lives and we see the brokenness, we see the difficulty, we see even trivial matters and things that we're engaged in, and we think, I'm not sure that God really cares about the small things. I'm not sure he would really, really want to be involved in these minor details of my life. And as we go through this story, not just thinking of what we can do or how we partner with the community, but how he, in his incarnate Word who became flesh way, meets us right where we are, even in trivial matters. Even in matters that we would say, I'm not even going to talk to anybody else about this. And realize that he cares enough to meet us right where we are. John chapter 2. The setting is a wedding celebration. The Jewish wedding celebration is, for their time, 7 days long. That is a long. You guys thought Catholic weddings were long. You thought 2 hours in a cathedral was a long wedding. 7 days of celebration and excitement that these people would come together and they would celebrate. There were important pieces within the whole celebration. There was the bride and the groom, right? That's who you're celebrating. And there is the master of ceremonies. Master of ceremonies is kind of like the wedding planner. That maybe for our time. So the wedding planner is making sure that everything comes off just the way that it's planned to come off. And everything is coming together. All of the food is staged and put in the right places at the right times. All of the beverages are in their stations, and making sure that if something is running low, they're going to make sure that it's filled up again. And the master of ceremonies is the one that is kind of overseeing how everything is to take place. So these are the players, and Jesus is just simply attending someone's wedding. probably because his mother was invited. And he brought a +3 or 4 with his disciples. Hey guys, there's going to be a party. Let's all go. So here's where it starts. John chapter 2. On the third day, where there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. We don't know whose it was. And the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. So just starting right there. He is just hanging out with his friends. That's what is happening. He has been invited to the party, and they are jumping in, and they are joining together. There is nothing unique that is happening in Jesus' life at this point. At this point, he has just grown up. We've looked at John the Baptist a little bit. He started to call disciples to himself, and so there's a little bit of uniqueness that is taking place. But he, to this point, 28, 29 years into his life have been relative obscurity, and he is just going to a party with his friends, just like you and I would do, hanging out with him. And so in verse 3, it says, when the wine ran out, right there. Now, here, I've already called this trivial, and I know there's probably about 20 of you that are probably going to say, well, wine is essential. and maybe wine Wednesdays, if you're going to pair with cheeses, the wine is the essential part of it. But the wine is a trivial side piece. It is a social piece to the whole thing. The wine ran out, and so socially, this bride and groom and the families are going to be embarrassed because this stuff, what is supposed to be a part of what is going to carry the party for 7 days, is gone. It ran out, and so Jesus' mother comes to him and says, "They have no wine." Seems kind of odd. Why would she come to Jesus? They have no wine. And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me?" Right? I think in Jesus' response right there, and the way it's phrased, it sounds harsh, the way that we have it translated. It was just more of a kind of a, why are you bothering me with this? Maybe there's a little bit of annoyance there, but he's kind of separating himself from the situation a little bit. But it's not disrespectful. It's just him saying, why are you coming to me? We're just hanging out. I'm hanging out with my friends. And in his response right there, I wonder if we can see even some of our response to some of the seemingly trivial things, even that we participate in as a church. Elevation celebration, bounce houses, and firewood sometimes. Just some of the things that we participate, Christmas lights. It's different things that we participate in that someone could come in and look at that and think, why is a church running a bounce house at an outdoor festival in the middle of town? Why would they bother the church for that? Right? And I think we see, even in Jesus' response, kind of that picture of it is not just simply that he is going to come and say, I am the Messiah, I am going to die for your sins, and you need to accept me. But what he does next is he communicates God's grace in a situation that he is not even necessarily in this situation. He's not even recognized. He's behind the scenes. He's behind the curtain. And there is the question asked, where did this come from later on? But there is no recognition that Jesus is the one that made the difference. There are maybe 10 people in the whole party. And there must be a lot, because there was a lot of wine that he made. More than... Anyway, we'll get to that. So in this, he was in relative obscurity, and he was simply ministering God's grace to a simply trivial matter that was just going to be an embarrassment. That's what he was alleviating. So he says, why do you bother me in this matter? Why is it part? And I think, as we think about it, why do we bother in these things? Because there is a piece of what we do and what we have as God's people that is what the community needs. What we can communicate in God's grace is the thing that can make the difference in our community as a whole. That's why we bother. And so he continues. His mother says to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Do whatever he asks you to do. And he says, now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. There's some spiritual significance that probably John was incorporating into this. And there could have been an idea of just the barrenness of the people of God during this time, that the wine had run out of God's presence in the people's lives. And so Jesus was there to restore that. There are some greater spiritual themes that probably John was coming in at, and I want to recognize those, but we're not going to dwell specifically on that for this. But it's 6 stone jars, and so basically they're going to fill these jars up with water, and then they're going to serve the master of the ceremonies. This is where I say there were a lot of people at this wedding, because this is probably going to be 160 to 180 gallons of wine that he made. You go to when you're in King Soopers or Safeway, and you're picking up milk, count the gallons, all right? In those cases, count the gallons and think in terms of, wow, that's a lot of milk. and just count back in the stock and see if it's 10 deep and if it's 3 up and down and how many across. And you're going to have a lot of milk to hit 180 gallons. And that was just for this one party. And so there was a lot of people gathered together. There was going to be some significant embarrassment that was going to happen in this case. But he saw the need that was there, and he began to address it, even though it wasn't going to be something that was going to lift him to prominence. It wasn't going to be the thing. He does respond in a specific way, saying, my hour has not yet come. There is a specific line in here, and so when he begins these miraculous things, it is the beginning of him making his way to the cross. There is a piece of what happens that is moving him in that direction, and he is probably aware of that somehow. But in this instance, he is just seeing a need that is there, saying it's not just something trivial, but it's some way that God's grace can be distributed to these people in a specific way right now. He says, fill the jars with water. They filled them to the brim, and he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast, the master of the ceremony. So they took it, and when the master of the feast tasted the water, which had now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine, but you have kept the good wine until now. This is the first of the signs that Jesus did at Cana in Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So they serve the master of the ceremonies, and the master of the ceremony is part of his job is to regulate. And a part of what they would have done probably in a party setting like this is they would have brought the good wine, or probably the wine with the most alcohol content would have been first. And once their senses are dulled a little bit over the course of 3 days of drinking this wine, then they begin to water it down more and more so that it's less potent, but the party continues to go through that time. And so it's the master of the ceremonies that is making sure that this is divided. He's the one that is going to taste and make sure that the different wines or the different beverages that are served are in their right order. And this one stands out to him. This one stands out because something had happened, that water that was filled had turned into not just a wine, but it was the best wine. It was the finest that was to be served at that wedding. And here I think we see even a principle of how God cares for those trivial places and wants to meet us right where we are. He doesn't want to just take our lives and simply keep us as ordinary individuals, broken and destroyed. He wants to restore. He wants to build us to be the people that he has designed us to be the image bearers of a holy God. He cares about those simple places in our hearts. But then also in thinking of how we approach other people and even trivial matters, that we have an opportunity not just to simply go about our ordinary day, but to communicate by just being with, by just simply conversing, by adding some words of encouragement, by adding a bounce house or some firewood to someone's house. We have very simple, specific ways that we can say, this is God's grace. This is taking the ordinary wood of trees that fall all around us and making them something of special use for the grace of God. It is being incarnational in the way that we minister to others. As we think about these ideas of looking for the simple and ordinary ways in which we can look at our community around us, how can we join in? There are a couple of things that I think we need to take away. One, Jesus' approach to everything in his ministry was as a servant. He was God who became man. Everything that he did, he could have played the God card. He could have said, well, do you know who I am? But he never did. He always approached as a servant, looking for the trivial, looking for these places that he can say, this is where God's grace needs to be applied. It can give us, as we begin to look at just ordinary situations, as we begin to look at ordinary conversations, as we begin to look at those as servants of God, we can begin to say there is greater purpose in just the simple things that we do. That maybe we would communicate more effectively the grace of God by simply helping, rather than saying things that we think people, giving them the sales pitch for the Tupperware of what God has for us. Greater purpose, a greater heart of service. And as we look across the landscape of within our church, within our community, and we begin to think, how does this stretch itself out? Begin to look for the simple ways that you can step in. Greeters at the front door and the back door. Folks that put signs out, they're you don't know who they are, right? You know who the greeters are because they see you on Sunday mornings. But looking at those particular positions, looking at assisting or helping in children's ministry, looking at those places to where, on an ongoing basis, you may not be leading that child to Christ on that specific day, but you may be able to breathe into their lives the grace of God because they had a rough week. It can just simply be in fellowship in the hallways. Just begin right here, localized, seeing with a sense of purpose, how can I serve the people around me? It'll radically change the way that we do things. And then as you go out, you go to your workplace, you go to the community, you stop at the Loaf and Jug, you stop, whatever you do in the community. You say, how can I serve? Who can I help? Who can I express kindness to that may not be expecting it, but they may need it on that particular day? And somehow, God takes the ordinary act of buying somebody a candy bar and turns it into the special grace that fills their life. That is the broader ministry. That is the purpose. That is the heart of service that we are seeking to do, both with our facility and with one another, all together as Conifer Community Church. I want you to bow your heads, and as we pray and finish up this morning, I want you just to consider the trivial. Consider and reflect on the trivial things that happen in your life. And remember right here, right now, God cares about those trivial things. God cares about those ordinary jars of water in your life. And He wants to turn them into something extraordinary. And allow Him to use those moments to minister His grace through your life. Lord God, I ask your guidance in this. Lord, that you would continue to clarify what types of people we should be.